Good evening to you all. Welcome. I'm Councillor Mike Johnston, newly elected as of May, so it's a fairly new place for me to be sitting to. And I will get the team to introduce themselves, which is probably easier, because they're new to me too. So off you go.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name's Neil Summers. I am new to North Somerset County Council. I've been here since January. I am the Senior Public Transport Planning Officer, and I helped people of Portishead get the X10 off the drawing board, so to speak. So good evening and hello to everyone.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Hannah Young. I am also new to North Somerset, a new councillor elected in Clevedon, and I'm the new executive, sorry, can you hear me okay? I'm the new executive lead for highways and transport, and absolutely delighted to be invited to meet you tonight by Heather Toms, and really delighted also to see the progress on the X10. It's a really exciting time to join, so thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay.
Hello everyone, I'm Rob Thompson, slightly longer standing member of staff at North Somerset Council. I think I'm in my 18th year now. I'm responsible for the delivery of new bus infrastructure at North Somerset Council. We've recently been given a significant grant from Department of Transport, and that's a piece of work that I'm leading, the delivery of new bus lanes and things of that nature.
Wendy, would you like to just say who you are?
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Town Clerk for Portishead Town Council. My name is Wendy Coulter.
I'm Amy. I'm the Communications Manager at the Town Council.
Thank you all. I thought that we would sort of structure the evening around, I've been to one or two of the bus meetings, but not all of them, but I thought we'd structure it around going through chronologically the bus services, bringing each kind of discussion related to each service. Is everyone happy about that sort of procedure? Good. Okay, let's start with the X4. I'm a fairly regular user of the X4, and I also live on the bus routes, and I can hear and see them going past. I sort of think that the service has settled down quite well. Yes, every 20 minutes, well, perhaps some of them aren't running to quite that timetable, and we do get cancellations. But overall, I think it's a good service, and it's settling down. Having said that, yesterday coming back from Hotwells, there was a queue from the Ashton Gate almost, and this was at quarter to 5, all the way up to Beggarbush Lane. It took us half an hour to get up to past the Beggarbush Lane junction. And I know that's all because of the bus lane going in, which is all very good, well and good. And perhaps a little bit more explanation about the bus lane on that particular junction, which seems to be fairly straightforward, unlike the other one, which is proposed down at junction 19. But I think we'll perhaps skirt around that one at the moment, but you can also enlighten us about those two bus lanes.
Yes, we're proposing, I think there's 5 different schemes along the X4 corridor. Now, some of those at a fairly early stage at the moment. We haven't really had any any firm proposals to share with the community. We're hoping to do that in due course. But the scheme at Beggarbush Lane is one of our early projects. We're hoping to start there in, I think, at the end of July. Now that's a bus lane that's heading towards Portishead, so approaching the traffic lights there from a Bristol direction. The bus lane's intended to allow buses to pass queuing traffic and get in front of the queue, so that the traffic lights can then allow the bus through first to continue towards Portishead. The works there actually this week are just some sort of trial holes and other investigations. I see. So just 2 or 3 days of work. Okay. Then we'll be pulling off again and going away to use those results to influence our design. So when we come back in, to say, hopefully end of July, we'll be in a better place to get those works right. And we're also using this as an opportunity to learn how to do traffic management, how the temporary traffic lights work at that location. So we appreciate that it's been causing some problems as well.
And do you agree that the junction 19 one is probably best left at the moment, or do you want to pick up on that too? And I didn't realise there were 3 others.
As we're also doing a scheme at we call it Roanham Hill, but it's for Bridge Road, junction with the A369, so at the outside Ashton Gate, outside Ashton Courts entrance, opposite Bridge Road. That's another bus lane that's heading towards Portishead. On the my mistake. That's heading towards Bristol. We'll be using there's currently 2 lanes as you head from Beggar Bush Lane Junction towards Bristol before you get to those traffic signals. So the idea is one of those lanes will become a bus lane to help the buses on their return journey to Bristol. And then we have a scheme either side of Junction 19, which yes are a little bit more contentious, but they're also quite an early stage. We need to do some more work before we share those proposals really with the councillors and parish councils, town councils, and the community. And then the 5th scheme is improvements to the traffic lights at the end of Wyndham Way, where that joins the High Street here. We think that by reconfiguring those traffic lights, we can help the traffic flow better there, but also help the buses get through that junction.
Thank you. I saw your hand going up, Bob. You wanted to comment. Do you want to come to this mic? There's one on the mic.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question. Obviously, with the Port 300, and it's a big issue for the public of the town. Has any consideration been put in place or inquired about of actually putting a bus lane completely in there? So like a brand new lane, so in extending the road, in other words.
All we have at this stage is literally a line on a plan that shows the extent of the bus lane that we'd like to put on Port 300. We really haven't worked it up beyond that. The nature of the grant we have from government for the bus service improvement plan means that we don't have time to acquire more land. We have a sort of 2-year period to deliver these projects, and generally acquiring land to widen roads where we don't already have that space. And I think that's true at Port 300. We can't consider that. We don't have that ability. So it's very, very early stages, but the current proposal is to use existing road space for a bus lane.
Thanks very much.
Rob, can I just ask you in relation to, as I understand, sort of tweaking the timetable, I'm cutting it by about 5 minutes by facilitating things like bus lanes. What about some of the easiest things that I picked up, for example, that the bus generally has to stop going down St. George's Hill because of all the overgrowing trees, which has to mean the bus moves out into the middle of the road, traffic has to wait for the traffic coming up. I mean, whose responsibility is that, or the tree cutting?
It's a mix. The bus company can do and often do some trimming. Equally, we do as well, and we have a budget as part of our bus service improvement plan to undertake some vegetation clearance where we'd like to do lots. We don't have the time or money really to do every piece of vegetation on every key route. So we'll be looking to prioritise and try and find the best location to do that. But yeah, we absolutely recognise it's an issue, not least for the bus operators having to repair damage.
Well, there's that as well. Yes.
Yeah, falling vegetation into roads is clever for other road users, and it causes delays, as you've said.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. Any questions from the floor about yes? Right. Is there a comment coming from that one first? Oh, I see. Okay, right. Fine.
Are you able to hear me
Yes.
this evening? Fantastic, because last time you couldn't hear me, which is fantastic. I think the only thing I'd add to what I've heard you say is that as a bus company, we've got no ability to trim trees. So we can find the locations and we can report them, but we don't have the ability to do it ourselves.
So, for example, the example I've given, your drivers are obviously very aware of that, as are you.
Yeah, so we're aware of it, but we have no ability to physically cut trees and bushes. We can only report them on. Yeah.
I wouldn't expect you to.
Yeah.
It's a highways issue. Yeah.
Apologies, I understood that you did have a small capability, but yeah, apologies.
No, I think on occasion we've been able to go out with an open topper and do it ourselves, but it's not something that we're supposed to do, so I wouldn't advocate it.
Okay, let's move on to questions about X4. Yes. There is a roving mic if you prefer.
Right, okay. Right, there's 3 X4s an hour now, all using the same route in and out of Portishead, which doesn't touch this end of Portishead anymore. It's a long way to walk from Brampton Court, then the residential places around here, to Sheepway or Sainsbury's or Wyndham Way, especially in inclement weather or when it's dark. Is it not possible to sort of review the 3 buses taking exactly the same route and at least have one coming up Bristol Road or Annesley?
I fully accept and agree with you, yes, and perhaps 1 per hour could go that way.
Yes,
and use Portbury 100, make it a bit quicker rather than training through Sheepway, where very, very infrequently do you see people getting on or off.
Well, my parents moved here in 1973 and we had 2 buses an hour down Bristol Road via Pill into Bristol, the 358 and 359.
Yes.
Up until last year, well, last year we were back to 2 buses an hour, all via Pill, and progress is so slow. And now this end of Portishead
Yes, there's nothing.
is neglected with public transport.
Well, I hope our representative here from First is picking up on that one. Yes, can.
When we moved here 11 years ago, I lived down in the Marina. We had 2 buses, the bus every half an hour. Then that stopped, ostensibly because the buses couldn't get around because of inconsiderate car parking. I accept people do park inconsiderately. However, I went to Weston on the X5 yesterday, and the way that it goes from, was it Worley, or I don't know how you say it, but
Well,
it goes through a big estate, very similar to Portishead, and the roads there are identical, and the bus goes through there. Now so I'm saying we had 1 every half an hour into Bristol. You could get up to town, brilliant. When we moved here, we moved there deliberately because there was a bus stop around the corner. Now we've got nothing. Then we had 1 every 2 hours, the 57, which was hit and miss at the beginning, but then it got regular. But people stopped using it because it was only 2 hours. And a lot of pensioners said, well, I don't want to go up to town for 2 hours. I just want to go get this, get that, and get the next bus back. So similarly to that lady there, is there any way that these 3 buses an hour into Portishead, perhaps 1 could be diverted one way and 1 could be diverted the other way, which, would be.
well, you're raising some good points, yes. I mean, do you have a comment up there?
I find my mute button. Yeah, I mean, these are all things that I can pass on to our head of network. I know that we're looking at some changes for September. But so yeah, I'll sorry, September. September is when we have, September is when we have our next network review and any changes. So we've got the next couple of weeks where we can review what changes we're going to make, and then that's when we have to register them for the traffic commissioner. So I can feed this back to our head of network for consideration.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the X5. I'm glad you mentioned your circuitous route around the Locking Estate in Whirl, because last time I was on it, it did exactly that, which they dropped for a while, didn't they? They dropped it for a period of some months, having had it doing that before, and I think it drives the drivers mad as well. But other than yes, because I've not been on that for about a month. So that seems to be a reasonably good service as well. I will pick up on the current X10 and the duplication of a bit of that route later, but we'll sort of stay on the X5 at the moment. Are most people sort of feeling that the X5 is working reasonably well? There's a comment at the back, Amy. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Lisa. Just wondering if you have any updates for the X5. You were hoping to route it through to Yatton. I believe that was on course for September. Is that still happening?
Good. There's an answer coming from.
Yeah, yes
Neil,
is
yeah.
the short answer to that. The long
Perfect.
answer is that should be from the changes that are going to occur on the first Sunday in September.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do know in the March meeting
Yeah,
that the
it's on,
X5,
it's on the meeting we recently had about the network review. I'd also like to answer the question because we're talking about the X5. The reason it goes where you're talking about, that's called Locking Castle. And you're right, it's very similar to the area that you've mentioned here. That was part of it was put back in because it was part of the Western Network Review. And I'd also like to add that I think that what you've been saying about the variations to the commercial service around Portishead, I think is fantastic. I think it's a really good idea. And I'll definitely take that away to first. I'll, discuss that with the network manager who I speak to and see what we can come up with. I think that's a really good idea.
So Neil, in relation to the via Yatton Kongsbury, you must have an idea as to how much extra time that's going to put on the journey.
It's debatable, to be fair, between sort of different people, but yes, it's going to add quite a significant amount of time, I think.
It's an hour.
Yeah, well, it's an hourly service and it's got 3 buses on it. So there will be, again, it's part of the network review for September. Nothing is finalised as yet, but the X5 will change in some form to accommodate the extra time added to go through Yatton. What that change is going to be, I don't know yet, because we only had the meeting last week. It's unfortunate the timing of this meeting in some ways that it's not slightly later and I could deliver more than what you would like to hear. But it's got to change to fit with the 3 buses to remain hourly. To add on, I think it will add at least 15, if not 20 minutes.
Oh, and the rest, and the rest.
Exactly.
Half an hour.
I'm being generous there. I do a lot of timetabling modules, council. I'll take a route away and I'll do what first do. So I'll go and timetable it and I've got software that can do that. And it's added a minimum of 22 minutes. I personally think that's a little bit like 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe. So I personally think more, but we're going on at least 20 minutes. And I use the X5. I quite often use it from Whirl to Clevedon to go to work. And when I've come along the M5, it's very generous on the time. The bus, I've only ever used the one just after 9. I get on that one. It's quite generous the time. So there is a little bit there where you've got to remember that you can add that in as well. It's not going to be as harsh as what I think, but I think at least 20 minutes, if not half an hour, which means something somewhere else is going to have to give, whether that means it comes out of what I call Toy Town all around, whether that has to happen again or not, or whether it's something else. Something has got to give somewhere to make it fit to still be 3 buses hourly. What the answer is to that yet, we haven't got there yet. We'll know more towards the end of this month when things have to be registered in time for the traffic commissioner for stuff to change. But yeah, it definitely will have to change in some form. I just don't know what yet.
Well, one very positive thing about this is the fact that it will put us and Clevedon into a railway station link.
Yeah, that is true.
We've not
yeah.
had for a very, very long time.
Well, the West Link's been very popular actually between Yatton and Clevedon. So that tells you it's needed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
yeah, because it's probably going to be quite long.
Oh, okay.
Sit on the corner there when you finish, yeah.
So going back a few years ago, my concern was with the transport. My grandchildren live in Yatton.
Okay.
And I'm here. And through the years, we've lost the 88 service.
Yeah.
And then it was very difficult. I could get to Clevedon, but I couldn't get from Clevedon to Yatton.
Yeah.
So it was great. It's great that the Westlink service is running, but I've had 50 failed attempts.
Really?
Yes.
We'll come to the West
Yes,
Link
yeah.
later.
Yes, yeah. So to me, it's still very important that the X5 does go
I agree.
to Yatton.
I agree. I mean, I've only
You
lived
know.
here 3 years, and in that time, I've seen it go X5, X2, nothing.
Mhm.
Yes.
Westlink,
yeah,
now
the
possibly
X2,
X5 again.
yeah, the X2
Yeah.
was
Yeah, and then they cut it and only went to Yatton. And that's in the
X7,
3 years I've lived
the
here.
X7
That's
as
before
well.
my time, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, I've only been here
Yes,
since
yeah.
2020.
but losing, like I say, my interest in the bus service has always been connecting Portishead to
Talk to your
Clevedon,
grandchildren.
Clevedon to Yatton.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's only down the road, you can't do
it's-
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, hopefully as of September, that will be.
Yes,
to
yeah,
fruition.
that would be great. And if Westlink does, you know,
Yeah.
can connect it as well, then that's even better. But it's just getting it on the ground.
Yeah. I understand.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further comments about the X5 before we move on to the X10, which commenced yesterday morning, and I was on the first service as well. Packed. Three young families got on at Sainsbury's and they were unable to sit down. I managed to get the pushchairs on, but it was very good to see it packed. But I saw going out of Cribs on the double decker going into Bristol that the second service was coming in with about 4 people on. So, but I hear also this morning it was packed before it even got to Portishead. So, I can see a comment up there about the X10. Oh, Sue. Hi, Sue.
A friend of mine has asked if I will read this out tonight. So bear with me. Right. He writes, I was on the first run out of Portishead this morning. Now this was sent yesterday. Waiting along with 20 others at the Coombe Road bus stop in Portishead. A roving Radio Bristol reporter was also in attendance and created a jolly mood on the first jam-packed single-decker service that took 20 minutes instead of at least 4 hours there and back that residents have had to endure for the last 3 years. A 3,000 plus name petition was presented for North Somerset, and now we have 3 round trips a day, giving 2 hours at Cribs Causeway with 4 on Saturdays. It was a shame we didn't have a TV crew on board, as the 95% passengers were over 65 and using their passes, and serenaded the driver with a rip-roaring version of The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round.
It's true.
I hope the service utilises a double-decker, and as the song says, all day long, as it soon gets upgraded to an hourly service. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Well, as you probably know, the 3 services, I'll give the Portishead times, leave Coombe Road around about 10:38, 12:38 and 14:38, which of course is going to be going up empty, isn't it? Because it's bringing people back. But those are the 3 current services which start down at the Clevedon Triangle and do sort of, a couple of them do a circuit around there. I'm sure there are comments made for the X10. Bill, you. How many people were on it yesterday or have tried it today?
All of you are open.
Okay, yes.
Hi, before I start, I'd just like to thank Heather for amazing work that she's done. Thank you. There is, my issue is long term. It's not about today, it's about 9 months' time, where we'll be in 9 months' time. My concern is that we are running a limited service at the moment, and as was just said, 90% are using bus passes. But what worries me is at the moment we have a government that's subsidising a £2 fare. We have a subsidised bus service on a subsidised passport, on a subsidised bus pass, which means there's no actual physical money from the public. And that's what worries me, is in 9 months' time, if we don't use this service and we don't expand the service, it will disappear. And that is a real big concern. And Heather has been absolutely brilliant advertising. And as I spoke to North Somerset Council just before this meeting, the funny thing is that we have, as a town council, 20 bus stops in Portishead. And ironically, the new bus posters that went up today don't really give a lot of information. They don't support the DRT, which is a shame. And they don't support the Cribs bus, which is a shame. Now, to me, would it be a really good idea that we create our own poster supporting the DRT and supporting the Cribs bus, because we own half the bus stops on the high street. So the town owns those bus stops. So we should be indicating the Cribs bus and directing them down to Coombe Road. I think that's the whole point, is promoting this service. Because if we get the people on it that are actually paying and they expand the service, it's secured. But what worries me at the moment is that it's not going to be secured, and we're going to end up in 9 months' time with no bus service to Cribs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Panel, anyone wish to make a comment? Anna, please.
I think that's a really, really helpful idea and suggestion, and I think it's a really pressing challenge for us. You're absolutely right. We've been so lucky to have, it's not just luck, we've had a lot of hard work from officers in bidding for this money. It's a fantastic opportunity for us. We know that, but we know also that we're going to have to make a change, and we're going to have to make it quite quickly to be able to sustain those services. And, you know, I've come fresh into this role thinking absolutely that, you know, it's number one challenge in terms of how we encourage and support people to move to the bus work. There's obviously a lot in the pipeline, but I think what I would say is that I think we need to think also of Cribs, particularly not just as a destination, but it's a hub, isn't it? It's a place that you can get to other places from. Yesterday, I was really delighted to be able to say to my husband's cousin in Chepstow, you can come and see us again, because they could get to Cribs, but they couldn't get to Clevedon. And, you know, it opens up all sorts of opportunities for all sorts of people. And I think fantastic to come up with suggestions about where we can get that message out. I think we really need to tap into local knowledge to be able to think about how we can support that. There is, I know that there is a marketing budget within the BSIP, and I'm sure that we can have a look and see, you know, what can be done to support that. So if there are thoughts about how we can promote these services, how we can get new people trying them, thinking about, you know, whether they'd work for them. At the moment, I know obviously it is a limited service. Officers are doing their best to stretch these resources as far as they can, but really usage will determine where we can expand. And so you know, it's great the work that you're doing, and thank you very much, all of you, for it.
Could you just tell us what BSIP is?
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. You see, I've only been on council for 5 minutes and I'm already talking in jargon. The Bus Service Improvement Plan, which is the plan which is supported by the national government grant of 47 million to North Somerset. 48 million. There we go.
Rob? Neil? Can I just ask the panel first?
Rob, do you want to go
Any
first?
comments?
Just to, in terms of the funding, we've got 48 million pounds for the improvement schemes, but another 55 million, Neil, for the services. And so, yeah, it's an amazing opportunity we have. It really is lots and lots we can do. Yeah, I'm focusing on the 48 million. That's difficult enough, but
It's a bigger number, isn't it?
And presumably some of that's going into the bus lanes you talked about earlier.
Yeah, so the 48 million pounds is allocated for the physical changes to the roads. So the bus lanes, the traffic light improvements, many bus stop improvements, transport hubs, we're calling them, you know, very, high standard bus stops, large bus stops in our town centres, things like that. So a very wide range of improvements.
Good. Yeah. Heather, yeah.
A lot of the feedback I've had.
Is the mic on?
Is it now? Yeah. A lot of the feedback I've had is from people who want to work there, because there's no way of getting there at the moment for employment, and that's been quite a bit of feedback, actually. You know, what about people who work there? That's been the main question. And I'm sure if there was an earlier bus to Cribs, that also then generates a later bus coming back for people to come back. Because obviously it's no good getting them there if we can't get them home again. So I don't know if this can be.
Can you remind us what time the old X5 used to get up there?
Oh, God,
It
I
was,
can't
yeah,
remember.
I mean, Cribs
I
doesn't,
think it was
the shops don't
early.
tend to open very early, do they? It was sort
Although
of
I don't
nine-ish,
know,
I
it
think.
wasn't that early. My grandson used to go to UWE and he'd never get there till about 9 o'clock. So it wasn't that early.
No.
Not really. But I don't think Cribs opens anyway, does it, till 10? Is it 10 o'clock, I think? So, you know, it's just that, like I say, this is the feedback I've had through Facebook and other means is, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of demand for that, for people to get jobs up there, the kids to get jobs up there when they come. And also another thing that is the route itself. I've had lots of people talking to me about Southmead Hospital, extending it to there. And also, I understand some parents were getting some figures together for whether the kids from Clevedon and Gordano schools going to the South Gloucester College, where, again, that is a route to get there.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. They call it Filton, South Gloucester College anyway. And there's quite a demand for that because for some reason Weston is a problem getting into Weston College. So there's a lot of demand for that. So there's extra things that, you know, need to be looked at, which I'm sure will expand the, you know, the potential.
Well, it has in the past been extended to Parkway for a short period of time, didn't it?
I've had that request as well, because a lot of people can't get to Yatton or don't want to get to Yatton station because it's dearer to go to Yatton than it is to go to Parkway and go on from there. So that's another thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can
Okay.
I answer that?
Yes, please do.
I'm nodding and smiling because me and Heather have spoke about these topics already and we've come here. I can tell you that, I've said this to you, Heather, but I'll share it with everyone else. The data for the trips that are not there, like the peak trip, where normally I can get data for trips that exist, but I can't for trips that don't exist. So when I was talking to Heather, we spoke about this at length, didn't we? I said, really, if those people that want that extra bus, because I can't go to Stagecoach and say, you know, because there's no data as such that exists, I need some other way to get that data to them to hopefully, you know, they have an appetite to grow this service. So they tell me, time will tell whether that's true or not, but they do tell me they have an appetite to grow it. I certainly do, but it's always money and funding and usage and things like that. So, I mean, I'm very positive about it and I hope that it continues in the form that it started in. Whether it will or not is another.
Well, Neil, roll back the years 5 or so. You may well remember that they had the luxury coach service running on a fairly well timetabled service up to Aztec West, MOD. And unfortunately, Stagecoach took that on and I can't remember who started it, but unfortunately it failed.
Are you looking for data?
Well, I mean, yeah, like, you know, like, I mean, like, for example, it's things like when we discuss stuff, I went to them and I spoke to them and it's things like, if people, I'm trying to word it better. If people want that bus to run earlier, then the only way I can collate that data is if we need to find some way, whether it's the town council or us at the council, to collate that data for the demand, to show that the demand is there. Yeah, that's it. It's there is, yeah, from the X5 when it went to Cribs. That is archived. I've asked for it. It's coming, but I haven't got it yet. But I mean, I think I agree with Heather. I think there is a demand to make it. I mean, my dream would be to make it an hourly service, 7 to 7, like the X5, you know, or maybe do something with the X5 and, you know, mix them up a bit with the X10 or something like that to cover all the bits that you're talking about. But unfortunately, the X10 isn't a commercial service, but I'm hoping that if it gets supported enough, it can become a commercial service. That's the aspiration of it.
Well, with my crystal ball in front of me and mentioning strategic planning in the future, Rob, you looking at transport hubs, and maybe the railway station would be a good transport hub in the future here in Portishead, where the X5 can sort of feed into a service that then goes up to Cribs, etc. We never know. Lisa.
What I was going to say, when we had the Cribs service before, it was the X5,
Yeah.
which then went to Western.
Yeah.
So that data would be with the X5
Yeah,
as to how, how the Cribs bus ran.
yeah,
So with you taking off the journey, going from Cribs, Portishead, Clevedon,
Yeah.
onto the M5, onto Western,
Yeah.
The X10 is going to work.
yeah. I think so as well. But
It's going to be,
yeah,
because it's such a short journey.
yeah, I think so.
I think it
I'm really
will.
passionate about it, as passionate as Heather, which is why, I mean, the history around it is that I know we had to lose something to get this, but when I first started in January, I went out and looked at the services that we as the council support. 57 and 59 was one of them. I saw the figures, I saw they were low. I got on the bus, I looked at it, or admittedly only a few times, but enough times to get a rough idea of the usage of it. I was made aware of the petition by Heather, so I went to my line manager and said to him, why don't we, this isn't used. The people at Port said, don't use it. They don't want it. Why don't we give them what they want? And that's what the X10 is. And I know it's not ideal. I know it's not, it doesn't get people everything they want to do, but I thought it would get it on the map and it would get it like to a starting point to hopefully make it grow. And I'm really passionate about making it grow. I agree, yeah.
The thing is, there are buses that will go from the hub at the Mall, that will go to Filton,
Yeah.
that will go to Southmead Hospital.
I think it opens up to
I've
doors.
used it. I've used it the 5th.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I know. Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing with it as well. I mean, originally when it was on the drawing board, lots of people were saying, "Oh, why doesn't it do this? Why doesn't it do that?" And I was like, "No, it has to go up the M5. It has to be fast. Otherwise, don't bother. It will fail."
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's ever sort of tried it this way before. It's an experiment. The operator were nervous. Everyone around me was making me nervous. I wasn't nervous, but because everybody else were, they were making me nervous about it. And I've worked on routes before that have done express stretches of motorway, and they generally are quite successful.
But the thing is, the X5 was going on the M5 twice.
Yeah.
So it was doing it from Cribs onto the M5, trying to come off the Portishead, which is one of the hardest junctions to come
I'm learning
off
that,
of.
yeah.
Coming round, do you know what I mean? Going through Clevedon, then going back onto the X5 to go to Western.
Yeah.
So horrendous.
Yeah, yeah.
And the turnaround and the cancellations that were happening at Cribs.
Yeah.
I used the hub at Cribs
Yeah, a lot of people do.
for 20 years.
Yeah.
Until we lost the X5.
We lost the link, yeah.
But but my dad's passed now, so I've not got connections over, but I need Yatton.
Yeah.
But Cribs for Portishead, Clevedon is needed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very
And we
pleased.
want it to be successful.
So do I. I'm sure you, so do I.
Whose idea was it to put one lane for the services and buses together?
Mm.
I came down the M5 tonight this afternoon, and it was miles back, absolutely miles back. And if the Cribs bus has got to come into that lane, I mean, whose idea was it?
You're opening a can of worms
Not
here.
me. Not me.
I think Neil's given us a really good.
The-
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The thing is, this will be the first summer, I think, that we're going to find holidaymakers trying to get into the services, people trying to go to Bristol. It's going to be a nightmare, absolute nightmare.
I did pass that on.
So
You told me that, didn't
I think that the 2:10 being the later bus at the moment is probably just as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to sit on the bridge for an hour, which I've done in the past.
I did,
Which
when
you
we discussed
used
this,
to,
I did tell the appropriate person what you said.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for a response.
Bob, you want to make another comment?
Yeah, just a quick question. I know Heather's done an amazing amount of work, but I'm just wondering if North Somerset would accept a survey done by Heather through social media about the point, obviously, of the being picked up at 9 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. Maybe we should ask the public that that question, but would North Somerset accept a survey? Because obviously you're saying that you have no data, but you won't get data unless you expand the service. But if you can't expand the service, would you accept a survey?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to find a way, whether it's this evening, to get that data, so I can take that data to the operator and say, look, you're saying you want to expand the service. We want to expand the service. Here's the bit. That's what I'm saying. I want to do that. So whatever you lot agree it this evening or a later date, we need to do something together to get that data, because like I said, there isn't any at the moment. It's just us talking about it. We need to get it. So if it is on Facebook, whichever way you want to do it, I'm new here, so whichever way you want to do it, I'm happy to support it 100%.
Can I?
Sorry.
Sorry, don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
I just want to come in as well, because I also wanted to respond to that point. I think there were some interesting things in it for me. One is about people who are already working at cribs and would need to get in at that particular time. But I think you also said people who might want to work at cribs, which of course, you know, opens up a whole potential. And I think, so I'd be really interested, yes, in any survey data that could be obtained, but I would really encourage that it's not just people who currently have a job and need to get there, but that we think more widely. And I'm what I was thinking. Absolutely, absolutely. So I think for us to think broadly about what are the sources of data that would help us to determine, you know, where need might be. The other thing that occurs to me is that we hear all the time the difficulties in getting people to work in retail these days. People are very short-staffed. You know, I'm not in touch with cribs at the moment, but I'm sure economic development people are. And I think, you know, to understand what's the pool of people in Portishead and Clevedon and our areas that would potentially be interested in work that's either there or at a location that you can get to from that hub, I think it's almost a mini piece of research, isn't it? But the more that we can bring together, the better chance we have of understanding where those needs can be met. So, you know, definitely would welcome any support that you can give on those sorts of issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I haven't used the bus yet, the X10, though I will. Does it stop in the Portby 100? Is there a bus stop in the Portby 100?
Yes.
Well, one query we've got is, why does it go along the Portby 100 when there's no housing down there at all? And there's quite a few people who live along the Sheepway, especially at Elm Tree Park home site. Quite a few potential customers there, but to get, especially coming home, to get across the Portby 100 to get to Elm Tree Park is actually quite dangerous, you know, to try and cross that road.
Okay.
But there's no difference in distance, you know, that's
No.
what we can't understand.
It was mentioned initially when we did the route test, we did it and they were the two options. The honest answer was it was done simply to speed. It was literally like get people out of Portishead, down that road as fast as possible. It is a learning curve, this route. I'm happy to change the route. Heather has already flagged that and we've discussed that as well. And again, I see it as your route. It's your route, it's your town. If you want to change it, I want to hear what you want it changed to. I'm happy to listen to it and I'm happy to change it. But it was simply done on once it left Sainsbury's, you know, gone.
Quicker, but there's potentially quite a few people along
Yeah,
that
I
route.
accept that. I accept that as a home goal, if you like. It was put on the table, it was discussed, and it was not obviously chosen as the option because it doesn't do that. But I'm happy to change it if that's what people want. There's people that you feel that would use it and would need it. Heather has flagged that.
I would, because I live in
Yeah.
Clevedon.
Then
there's quite a few
you have to
people.
either get Max 4
Yeah.
into Portishead or into Sainsbury's, and then, you know, it puts you off.
Yeah.
obviously,
No, that's-
especially when
that's-
you've got a car outside.
that's a really fair comment. I was expecting that to come up.
It did.
We were going to do that.
The X5 did,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
X4 does, as you know.
Yeah, we were going to do that, and that's the honest answer. We didn't, simply on speed, nothing
Please do
else.
Yeah.
I will take it away and do it because we've got.
Do you have a
some-
large family you can bring with you? That's great.
Yeah, good one. Because we've got some changes that we want to do in the school holidays as well. Not necessarily route or timing changes, but I could do that at the same time. I would have to time it with the operator to see how much it would affect the time. I mean, I actually had a question for everyone. I know it's probably not really allowed, but you know, I'm new, so I'm going to get away with it. ASDA in Cribs Causeway was something which me and Heather discussed at length. which the operator thought would be something that could be put on there. And it was between ASDA or what we're now discussing. And we opted for ASDA. Now, my question, I suppose, to the people of Portishead is not which one would you prefer, because I'd like to do both, but if push come to shove, would you rather it miss ASDA out and do that if that were the case for timing reasons? I know you might not be able to answer that now, but for me,
because
I know you would, yeah, obviously, yeah. From a wider range of voices, what, you know, it's that weighing up situation really, and it was literally between those two locations. And there's minutes, it's minutes. If you looked at it and you weren't a scheduler, you'd think it doesn't matter, but it really does matter. But I can add that, and hopefully we can have both on. Maybe I could tweak it at Clevedon or something. I've got to look at the data between now, and we've had data every day because I've asked for it daily. That's not the norm. It's normally monthly, but I'm microscoping this like under a microscope because I want it to work and I want to address all these silly little things that need to be ironed out. I mean, what I will share with you is that the first day it carried 89 people, which is pretty impressive, actually. Today, I haven't seen it yet. I'll see it tomorrow, but it probably is about the same. So it's on the right track, and I hope it stays on that track. Time will tell, but I knew that was going to come up. And the honest answer was we chose ASDA over it, effectively. So I know, it's shocking, isn't it?
Well, as mentioned, the young families that got on at Sainsbury's, they all got off at ASDA with their pushchairs and whatnot. So I thought it was a good stop, actually. Any further comments on the X10 then before we move on to the sort of final group of buses, which are the 59, the deceased 56, wasn't it? 57, the 59, and the Westlink DRT. Demand responsive transport, DRT, but we'll refer to it as DRT. So 59, 2 services a day, 8:02 from Nailsea, arriving at Gordano at 8:30, and 15:35 departure from Gordano and 1600 arrival back in Nailsea. So specifically geared to school children, students moving between the 2 schools or 2 communities. Which came as a bit of a surprise to me, actually. I didn't realise that there were a few, you know, going backwards and forwards across the hill, but clearly there are. Yeah, a loss of a service to the general public to go over to Nailsea, of course, and Hughes, Tinsfield and Noah's Ark Farm, where the 2 other sort of intermediate stops of note were. But were people using it? Clearly not. So I assume, Neil, that's why it got dropped.
The X10 is obviously a replacement of the 59 and the 57. They were, if you like, on the hit list of routes that obviously I went and monitored. And at the time, there was no money for extra stuff or all this 48, 55. I mean, if I was sitting where you were, I'd be thinking, well, you're throwing all these big numbers around, but yet you've cut a bus and you've replaced it with something else. And that's because when this was first done on the drawing board, the BSIP money, Bus Service Improvement Plan money, hadn't actually arrived as of yet. So the X10, like I said, what the 59 and the 57 weren't used enough. And I took, like I explained earlier, I took the petition for the X10, and that was my way of giving the people of Portishead a service they would use rather than one they didn't use. And Westlink obviously started in April. And that obviously is the substitute, if you like, for the 59 and the 57. The reason the 59 stays as it is, effectively as a school service, although anybody can use it, is a public bus service, but effectively it's just a school journey, is because the Home to School department pay us towards the 59, which in turn helps pay for the now new X10. So that's how that sort of came about and why they sort of are now, as you put it, deceased as such. With a low, it seems to be that any service that is low usage now, the DRT is there to pick up the slack of that and give the town the bus that they want. Is sort of, it's not ideal, I know, but it was the best I could do at the time.
How many students are using it roughly every day?
It varies day to day. I think the maximum is 19, the least is 11.
Oh, okay.
So I say 15 average a day. So it's
using a single decker.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons. Again, it's created a new conundrum for me because we've route tested the 59 with a double decker. It just doesn't go. If you know the route, you'll know that you can't put a double decker down there. So the X10 currently on school days cannot be a double decker because it's the same bus. It does the 59, the X10, then the 59. Yeah. Stagecoach have scheduling ways where they swap the bus around, but effectively the 9 a.m. journey from Clevedon is the 59 school bus in the morning. And the journey that does the 2:10 Cribs then goes on to Weston-super-Mare to do the 50, which again can't be a double decker.
Can I just come in?
Yeah.
So when we knew we were going to lose one of the services because of the X10, for some reason I was thinking the 57 was one schedule, the 59 was another,
No, it's one bus.
but it's one bus.
It was one bus, 2 hourly.
And a lot of people were really, really confused and thought, you know, it was only one service that was going to be lost.
Yeah.
Do you know how much notice was given on those on that service being
What, for it
dropped?
to be cancelled?
Yes, because
Um,
people now are shocked that they've lost the service, and it's not the Nailsea. It's the one from the High Street that went round Brampton and then up Wetlands Lane, then
Okay.
back down feeding the High Street.
Okay.
A couple of people found it online,
Right.
and everyone else was under the impression they were losing the Nailsea bus,
Not-
but
yeah.
keeping the Wetlands bus.
Okay.
And I've always tried to, I never quite knew whether it was two separate buses,
Yeah. Well, why would you? You wouldn't.
you know,
wouldn't,
but
yeah.
it wasn't. It's one bus
Yeah.
feeding two services,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
So it's took Portishead people a long time to realise that it was actually the High Street, Brampton, Wetlands Lane, then back into the High Street.
Right.
So the only way we're going to combat that is we need Westlink to be in Portishead.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because there's many elderly ladies that do 3 or 4 trips a day from Brampton. And I know it doesn't seem a long walk, but to them it's a long walk and they actually do need to use the bus. And the thing is, when I then started helping a group at the top of the High Street, at the top of Redcliffe Bay, and they formed a group called All Aboard the 56.
Yeah, I know.
And and that's because that was took
yeah,
off at short notice, and there was a lot of kerfuffle, and you know, and now they've got the DRT service, and it's got its flaws, but it's working. Yeah, it will work. It
Good.
will, once it's tweaked and once everyone's got used to, you know, up at the top, they're finding it easier to ring up and make their appointments rather than use the app.
Right.
And it is successful. It does tend to just be them on the bus. So we need to see multiple use
Yeah.
of that minibus.
Can I
But-
ask you, Lisa, at that point,
Yeah.
do they tend to get together as a group?
They
and
are
form
doing
a sort of
that.
a
They are-
departure at a particular
Yeah,
time?
they are doing that. And that's working really well for the minibus because they're
Mm.
taking 10 passengers at a time
Yeah.
from Portishead to Clevedon, you know, and they book their return journey and they're finding it easier to do it by the telephone than they are via the app, you
Is
know,
that
because
'cause
of
of-
their age.
Is that because of like coverage of mobile phone signal, or just it's just easier
It's
for them?
just easier.
Okay, fair enough.
It's less failures.
Yeah.
I don't want, you know,
No,
but
yeah.
it's less,
Yeah, yeah,
it's less
exactly.
failures.
So there's a Bristol number on the leaflet here.
But it's, so people of Portishead are just learning that they've lost the 57 and the 59. You see, they were under the impression Nailsea was staying and the 57 was going. And then it
Okay.
wasn't the two services.
Thank you. Yes. Before you do, Neil, can I just ask you, could you also describe how the hubs work? As I understand, there are 30 Westlink buses. And so how they sort of distributed, where's their main sort of central depot?
Okay, right. When I started in January, Westlink again was something that was on the drawing board. I was the lead on it until just as it started, and we have a guy that isn't here tonight that leads on it. But I can tell you a little bit about DRT. The main hub is Nailsea, which is where they're based. I think there's 14 buses in the south currently. the south, it's split into different regions across Wecker and North Somerset.
He was hoping to have 30 though, wasn't he?
Yes,
Yes,
that's a driver problem.
right.
Okay,
So you've got
He was
40.
hoping to recruit 50 to
Yes,
60 drivers
yes.
as well, wasn't
It-
he?
that is, again, as far as I know, I don't really have much to do with it anymore, but I do know that there are still driver issues, recruitment, I mean, and that what you say is absolutely spot on, is correct. The numbers you're quoting are spot on and correct, but they're not at their numbers yet, because they are struggling to recruit drivers, as our First Bus and Stagecoach and everybody else. The south is the largest area, which is North Somerset, which is odd because we're North Somerset and it's south. So I always have to try and make sure my brain doesn't call it the north area, because we are the south, we are the largest area. I think it's fantastic that people are doing what you said there with the 10 people on the bus. And that's such a, I wish everybody did that. It would be a lot better. I know that from speaking to my colleague, Louis Mertens, who Heather, I know you've met, we're trying to get data. Again, I know I keep talking about data, but since I've worked here, it's all about data, right? And the data from DRT, again, because it's so early, it's only been, what, 2 months? It isn't quite where it should be for us to know where the bus should be. And they know, they know the people that run the contract. We at the council, I've been in meetings with them at length, that it needs to get better. It is getting better. I hope it is. They're telling us it is. And, you know, making sure the buses are in the right place at the right time, and, you know, they're doing the right thing by the environment and not sending 2 buses, one over there, like they, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, and because I said about this group of people that used to use the 57,
Yeah.
and they did used to go to Nailsea on it as well.
Yeah.
But Bob was saying about how we could use our bus stops. I just feel that the advertising for the DRT, even though it's got the barcode and
QR code
the
thing, yeah.
QR
Yeah,
code,
yeah.
it doesn't really tell you,
I agree.
you know, and Doris down the road isn't going to
I
whack
agree.
out a smartphone and do her, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my time to the people on Brampton Way, and I'll forward the telephone number to them. And I think they will do that group journey,
Yeah.
where they'll book it the day before,
Yeah.
or book it 3 times a week. So they're not isolated,
Yeah.
you know. But we as a community, do you know what I mean? We want to promote it because we want it to work.
Yeah.
And we don't want a glorified taxi service,
Yeah.
because that's what it's been.
Yeah.
It's just one person riding one
Yeah.
minibus.
Neil, can I just pick up
Yeah.
on
Sorry.
the hub, the main hub you mentioned in Nailsea?
Yeah.
Are they physically sort of held in a big warehouse garage type of arrangement?
I've never been
so that-
there, is the honest answer.
I mean,
but-
could they not be spread around? Could there not be a couple based here in Portishead, for example, in somewhere?
I mean, I could ask the question, but obviously, I mean, like First Bus and Stagecoach have hubs and depots where they keep everything. And
Yeah,
sort of
sure.
in some ways,
Yeah.
DRT is the same. It's that they chose Nailsea as that location.
But it's
I
more
don't know
difficult
why,
to
but-
park up a double decker on a single, isn't it? than a
Yeah, true.
Small minibus.
Could I, sorry,
Yes,
if I could just come in briefly, some really interesting questions, which we'll go back to the lead for the DRT scheme. But I did some work some years ago on demand responsive transport for emergency services. And although obviously you have to park the vehicle somewhere when it's not being used, actually they don't tend to operate from a hub in the sense of, you know, somebody calls and something comes out from Nailsea to find you. The data that you get from from all of the usage and the calls means that the software over time learns actually where do you need to park these things when they're not in operation, to be as close as possible
That's
to
only
where the need
bedtime
comes from.
Nailsea, like when they
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
bed,
yeah. So
basically.
it's not as if there is a you know, a set waiting to go. And I know that because there's an ambulance that parks outside my house pretty much any time that it's free, because obviously I live in an area where lots of people have heart attacks and so on. So that it's all ready to go as and when. But so I think that's the way it works. I also it is early days for me. I said I'm learning fast. I understand that there are 30 in the fleet over the whole area. There are 16 currently operating in North Somerset. So we have more than our close, more than our fair share, which is fantastic. It shows that we're really using it. I've also had the feedback. I was in Yatton last week and listening to some of the feedback around some of the teething problems with the app, and that, you know, some people have had great experiences, some people haven't. Really useful to hear about all of them so that we can get it right. That piece around calling and being easier for certain people, and being clearer about what the ask is when you call and speak to someone, is definitely something that I took away last week in Yatton. And also the piece about individuals, you know, getting the bus, and that was great, but they were the only person on it. I think the example that you've given is absolutely fantastic. And when I was before I was elected, and I was talking to lots of people, obviously in my local area, so many people said to me, you know, that the changes in the bus services that we saw last year had meant that they felt trapped and isolated. I'm really passionate about well-being in our communities, and I think it would be fantastic if we could talk about what you've done and hopefully spread that idea to other areas. It's great for the bus service. It's great for people to be doing that sort of thing together, and I think it's just a wonderful example. So I'd love to keep in touch, and if we can spread that practice elsewhere, that would be brilliant.
Yes, Heather, please.
I'd just like to say that I've been asked by a number of elderly people's homes to give a talk about Westlink and the X10 as and when it was going to come out. And I distributed a lot of leaflets, but one of the places I had a talk to, they arrange outings, and they were talking about using the Westlink to have an outing. I know it only takes 16 people, but this is something that they want to do. And another thing I advised all of them to do, because they're all elderly people, is forget the app, ring up. Because my experience of ringing the call center, you're talking to a face to face almost. They're much more appreciative of what you're doing, where you want to go. So that's my advice to people, is to ring up, and you know, you get a much better service. The app, I feel, is not particularly good. People have said to me that they see it doesn't go to Bristol Airport, but it does go to Bristol Airport. But the app was saying it didn't. So it is confusing for people. So that's my opinion, and that's my advice to people, is to ring up.
And presumably you're distributing these leaflets.
The 0117 number. And I've distributed leaflets to the old people's, I say old people.
Thank you.
I am an old person, so one of
Thank you. There was a comment behind Amy's.
Thank you. Yes, I've rung up quite a few times and used the service, but the one thing that confused me was there's 5 of us go on a Saturday, and we arranged to meet to be collected from the precinct. But last Saturday it was 35 minutes late, and then I discovered that you use letters. They say they're going to pick you up at bus stop number B or C. Well, I didn't realise bus stops had letters, and looking into it, it was the other side of the road.
Oh, how annoying.
Well, we can't stand for 35 minutes outside Wenger.
Right.
We are sitting in the precinct waiting. Right. Can we, when we ring up, say, could you pick us up at and state the number, the letter of the bus stop? Can we do that?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
No, it's a good point you're making. Yes.
One other thing, I'm speaking on behalf of a friend, that they find now there's no buses, at the village quarter at all. So how do they get around that?
Westlink.
Well, I go and fetch them and bring them to the precinct, but
yeah,
but I ring up because the app.
Well, maybe they can arrange for the bus to be collecting them
No,
before
I've
coming
asked
to
that.
the precinct.
I said, would you collect? And they said they will collect her from the village quarter, but they cannot guarantee that it'll be the same bus that picks us up from the precinct.
Right.
That defeats the object, because we all want to go together, you see.
Yeah, that would be really unfortunate if you were to book it all together, and you probably, if you had my luck, you probably would get on different buses.
Yes.
If I'm honest.
Can we get round that at all? Because I have to go and fetch her and bring her back to the precinct.
Probably not, is the honest answer, because of the way that it's designed and the way it's designed to work. It's meant to be, as Hannah said, the most intelligent form of So effectively, you'd think that because it is meant to be the most intelligent form of software, that it would know that, say, me and you want to get on the same bus.
Yes.
So, you know, I mean, I can ask. You can always ask.
I do ask every time. But
I
they say
will.
no.
I will ask my colleague who works on it, and he's on their case 24/7. So I will definitely mention that to Louis and see if it can be done. In the grand scheme of things, I don't see why not, but I know that it's an intelligent form of software that it should really do that. That me and you should get on the same bus. But like you said, that might not happen. The thing I'd like to add about the phone number is whatever works. If the phone number works for you, ring the phone number. If the app works, do the app. If the QR code works, you know, I mean, I'd like to answer the question as well about the 57. And while we're on Westlink, the QR code, when this first was introduced, I did say, I've been in buses since I was 18 years old. I started as a driver and I've done all sorts of different roles in the bus industry. And the first thing I said was, a lot of people don't know what a QR code is. And I'm in my 40s and I've never used a QR code in my life until about 3 months ago. And that's the truth, right? So now my grandparents are more tech savvy than I am when it comes to things like that, because they use the buses and stuff like that. So I totally get that. And I did mention that to people, but there seems to be in the world now that everybody knows how to do it. And I didn't know how to use a QR code. I actually had to change my phone because it was too old, because it wouldn't pick up a QR code. So I totally feel your pain on that one. I really do. So for me, I would go for calling if it was me, the old fashioned way. So yeah, it has been looked at and it has been addressed a bit, but whether they do anything about it or not, I don't know, because that's the modern world, you know. You have to go and buy a newer phone like I did, I suppose, and you might get told that, I don't know. But the answer about the 57 and the 59, that's an own goal from us. I'm really sorry that it wasn't advertised as well as it could and should have been, that they were being withdrawn. I am very sorry about that. And there is no reason why anybody that doesn't have the bus brain like me, that does scheduling and stuff, would know that that is 2 buses or 1 bus or 3 buses or whatever it is. So yeah, we got that wrong. I hope that we'll go away from that and learn from that and not do that again. That's certainly something that I've learned from this evening, that I think maybe when we withdraw stuff, we need to be more vocal about it. We need to shout about it rather than whimper about it. So like I said, I am sorry about that, and I'll make sure that that doesn't happen again. And again, I know I keep repeating myself, but I did travel on the 57 and the 59, and I spoke to the people on the 57 and 59, and they were a lovely bunch on the 57. They were regulars, and they described the bus to me like it was like a little club. And you probably think we still took it off them, you know, still took their toys away kind of thing, which I did. Yeah, I know, nasty man. But it just wasn't financially viable. I didn't want to do it, but obviously, you know, I had to kind of thing. And, you know, with the success of the X10 so far, I hope it works. And I know I keep saying this is a silver bullet, but the people that use the 57 can use Westlink and the X10. I know it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing.
Just a very quick thing. And also, I don't know if people realize that you can start booking it 24 hours in advance at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's correct.
That was a shock.
Was it? What, getting up at 6 to book it? Or
No,
just
I woke at 8 and
Oh, right,
booked it.
okay. Okay. All right. My nana always
But
gets
it's
up
a
at
very
5.
good
So.
service. I've enjoyed it, and it's very comfortable as well.
Good,
Thank you for that.
Good.
Thank you.
With West Bus, it's the same with the Chris Bus. My concerns are long term. So to give you an example, currently, as we all agree, that the Westlink buses aren't picking up very many passengers, and as you say, the buses travel from Nailsea that have to come into Portishead to pick up a member of staff. A member of the public. That takes time. So say 20 minutes, you pick up a person from Portishead, 10 minutes to their destination, say the town centre, and then another 20 minutes to get back to Nailsea or to the next destination on their list. The trouble with that is you're paying a driver at £13.75 minimum wage. So you're paying £2 for one person to get on a bus at £13.75 an hour. Now, to add to that, just to give people some ideas, currently those minibuses are costing around £200,000 to buy. That's all in, that's with the tracking system, with the CCTV. Okay, so if you times that by 30, that's £6 million. But these are only being leased, so they don't actually belong to anybody, so they're just leased. So I don't know what the lease price is. The council has asked North Somerset for some information. Sadly, it couldn't be given. But that's just one point. So on top of that, the drivers have a mobile phone, which is paid for. The driver's cost, which is £13.75. The app, which I understand is around £27,000 a year. Management, which is the people that manage the staff. The phone staff, so the staff that take the phone calls. The fuel, the maintenance. Now, if you break this all down to an hourly basis, it's probably about £20 rather than the £2 the residents paying. And what my concern is long term, if we can't get this right, we need to get people using these buses. And I think Heather and Lisa brought a great idea, which is what we should promote, is getting groups together to actually to actually take these buses. Because at the end of the day, in 2 years' time, if this doesn't work, it's a massive loss of public money, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's public money, and we are talking millions. And I don't know what they've already used out of that money so far, but I just think it's quite a substantial amount. And to give you an example, I kindly noticed the people that were putting the posters up today, and I stopped at Cordano School, and within 20 minutes, 6 DRT buses passed me and the 2 North Somerset representatives, and all of them were empty, every single one of them. Now that was 4 going into Portishead and 2 going out, but they were all empty. And that's my concern. It's not about today, it's long term. And we need to get this right. So North Somerset needs to work with the public, and North Somerset needs to work with the bus company to make sure that in 2 years' time, we have a viable service that is here to stay and not disappear yet again.
Bob, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we all take your points on board, and let's just hope, fingers crossed, that it is going to be a success.
Can I just ask,
You
is there any
suggested, yeah.
reason why, I know it says demand transport, is there any reason why people can't just put out their hand and stop a bus and say, where are you going? Are you going past Waitrose? Are you going to some, is there any valid reason why this can't happen?
There is a reason. It runs under a different license. You have to have different licenses to run, like you've got a taxi license,
Right.
you've got a PSV license. It will have a PSV license, but it's registered. It's not a registered bus route. So like the X5, the X4, they're all registered bus routes,
Yeah.
whereas a demand response transport system is not a registered bus route. It's like a go anywhere kind of bus. So you can't, I mean, in an ideal world, that would be fantastic if you could do that. But you just can't. It's the law that's the way it's done. It's just done. I can't remember the numbers. There's like different sections of section 22, section 19, that sort of thing. I can't remember what they are, but it's not a registered bus route. It's a demand response transport route. So it's not. I mean, I'm new here, like I said, and there's basically a DRT system. There's lots of them all over the place. I've been involved in them before I moved down here. And they are basically brought in as a cheaper alternative to numerous 57s, if you like, yeah? And instead of having like a bus 57 going up and down, not really carrying anyone and costing, I don't know, £10,000 a month, for example, because that's sort of where we're at. Just, yeah, because it's a fixed route and people aren't really using them, and they're quite new. You know, I mean, I know this one's new, but in general, they're sort of 10 years in the making, maybe 15. They're seen as a way to minimise supported services, because, like, for example, say like on the 57, for example, right? So let's just say it was every half an hour, right? And it was only a shorter route, but there was only averaging 3 or 4 people a trip. it's not making any money, is it? Right. So the best way to do that, well, not the best way, the DRT way to do that is to remove that bus from running 12 or 14 hours a day, 15 trips a day, if you like, and doing it more like a taxi, because.
So who's going to report the driver for stopping you to pick up a passenger who, as Heather's
Could I just,
saying, is flagging it down?
if I will take away the specific question because I think we can find out the answer to that one. But I suspect, and I am speculating, but I suspect the issue is that we don't have our bus services are commercially run in this country, and so those specific routes will be commissioned from specific, that they will be operated by people who have put forward the proposal to operate them and have won that route. So I think what it might be that the license issue is because actually if somebody else then comes along and just starts running something on that route, there potentially would be a complaint from the operator to say, well, actually, this isn't now commercially viable to do my route because somebody's basically running a service on my
operating like that, though, surely.
The DRT is operating in areas where there is not a scheduled, on routes where there is not a scheduled bus service.
Is it worth me also coming in here?
Someone on the screen?
If you booked, I believe,
yes, yes.
sorry, but
Yeah.
did you want to respond or not?
Did you
Sorry, I can't see the camera of you guys anymore, but and I couldn't hear. I think maybe someone was also talking, so I don't mind if they want to finish and then I'll come in.
No, make your comments.
So I guess all I was going to say is that it also comes down to sort of driver licensing and how drivers are managed, and obviously the operator's license at which we are kind of governed by that's potentially different between the DRT and a bus service. So the licensing will be different, how we manage the drivers will be different, the legislation around that's very different between the kind of hail and ride, and it's that kind of where do you draw the line between what is technically a kind of a taxi service hail and ride versus an actual bus service which has, you know, dedicated bus stops and people and a timetable and all that's registered with the traffic commissioner. The bus industry is quite regulated. There's quite a lot of stuff in the background. Yeah.
Thank you.
That possibly doesn't help. That's probably more jargon than anything. But there's quite a lot behind the scenes in terms of running a bus company and the DLT.
Yeah, sure.
I hope sort of I've explained it as best I can, but I've been an operator myself, and if I wanted to run, like, I don't know, Western Sports Head, I have to register that route. Like if I wanted to take on the X5, if you like, I could have an X5 and I don't know, an X15, then I have to register it. I can't just go and buy a minibus and just let people ring me up, because effectively, in some ways, pardon the pun, it is a little bit like a glorified taxi service. It's a demand response. So the clue sort of there is the demand for the response. You see what I mean? Whereas the 57, I keep using that as an example, bashing the 57, but that wasn't a busy route. So it just wasn't used. So now those people, like, you know, like it was mentioned earlier this evening that, like, for example, it was every 2 hours. So if they wanted to go out 3 or 4 times, they had to wait around. And I remember when I was on the 57, there was a lady that got on and I got chatting to. She was an ex-Londoner like myself. And she got on the bus to go round because she didn't want to wait. And the driver let her do that. And I thought that was great, you know. But now that's gone. She doesn't have to wait 2 hours for the bus. She can just ring up the DRT and go backwards and forwards as many times as you like. I know that's not the ideal solution for everyone, but that is the vision, if you like, of DRT, is that instead of now waiting 2 hours for the bus, you know, or an hour or whatever it may be. No, I mean, I'd love to hear if there is any horror stories about DRT. I mean, I would like to pick up on some things that, is it Bob? Bob, that you said.
Fairly briefly, please.
Okay. The driver rate is not that high that you said that they get there. Yeah, it's not that high. I'm not prepared to say that.
Let's not get into the technical
it's not that high. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of add that, and that's one of the reasons why they're struggling to recruit. They're aware of that. They're trying to address that. Meetings I've been in, I was in one last week. They're doing everything they can to change that, to get more drivers in. The other thing as well is that when a bus I think Anna touched on this as well. It's unfortunate that you saw all those empty buses. I mean, for all we know, all them empty buses might be going to all different places to pick up 16 people each. We don't know, do we? But a bus would not come to Clevedon or Portishead and then go back to Nailsea. They don't do that. And the mobile phone thing, the mobile phone, I learned this last week, is given to them. It's like it's the way they sign on for work as well on this mobile phone, which links to the ticket machine and the data at the call centre. And the reason that is done like that's the modern way of doing things, because it takes away the driver going to the depot like he would at first or Stagecoach, signing on, getting in a ferry car, being taken to the bus. None of that happens on Westlink. It does, yeah.
When you break down the cost down to £1, £2 fare, or £2, £2, £4, £4 fare for 2 people, it's a massive difference.
I agree.
And you don't know in 2 years' time if the central government decides to give you another grant. They could give that grant to Sussex or to London boroughs or to Newcastle. So that in 2 years' time, you might not have the money to carry on the DRP service.
I agree, but then the alternative is to, I mean, I don't know. The alternative then is to not do it or try it at all and have nothing to do.
And how long do you think you're likely to see it sort of settling down? How long are you planning to?
Well, we're into
giving
sort
it
of
roughly?
2 months now, aren't we?
So at least 6 sort of thing.
Yeah, again, I can go on that. Yeah, and I think what you've brought up, I think what you brought up earlier about the advertising, I do a lot with the roadside. They're in my team, those two. They told me that they saw you today, so I knew you was going to say that. They told me all about that. Yeah, they never said that.
An advertising format that we can use.
Well, then let's do that then. I'm happy to do that with you. I'll say that in front of everyone. Whatever it takes to make people use the bus more. I've been in buses all my life. I've done 25 years in it. I've driven them, I've managed them, I've run them, and now I work at the council. You will not find anyone that's more passionate about buses than me. And whatever it takes to help you get whatever it is you need to get that in the bus stop, I'll say it here and now. I'll help you as I helped Heather. So whatever it takes, I'll do it.
Can I also just really quickly, I think, there was a lot in what Bob said, but you made a fantastic offer and a suggestion and a great idea. We absolutely have to get more groups using the buses. It's going to be much more effective and efficient if we've got buses with 5, 6, 7 people on. And you made an offer to work with you, and I think that is a great idea. We can take it away. We can think about. We've been given this 2 years to be able to develop the service, and you're right. This is our time to trial things. This is our time to think about how do we need to do things differently, not just in terms of the actual physical transport, but how we work with communities to be able to make it work for all of us. So thank you, and I think that's certainly let's continue. Okay, that's fine. It's good feedback. We welcome it. We'll.
Couple of points over there, please, Bob and Paddy. Oh, you've got the mic.
I'd just like to make a comment that I've been involved with these bus meetings for a while, and this isn't the first time that you've not told anybody about what you're going to do and done it. Even when the X4 turned into what it is and what it was before, I think we had about 48 hours notice. Nobody was told, the council weren't told. The council offered to do training sessions for people to use the app. We got no response back from Weston as to how to do that. Okay, so if people do want some training on how to use the app, the best thing I can suggest is you come along to something called the Tea and Tech sessions, which are run in the council. And we have done that a couple of times and run through them. But we offered to do that. And I know you're new people, but we've heard a lot of this before from the old people. And, it just didn't happen. I think going back to a couple of the points, not particularly perhaps only on buses, but certainly on cribs, there's a lot of people want to go there of an evening. Certainly the youth, they can't drive. So that's an issue. Also, all the stores might open late. They start open late in the morning, but they open late to the evening as well. So I think you need to look at your timings a little bit there. And I think, again, as we said, if you're looking to take employees and get the numbers up, then you have to think about different hours,
Yeah, I agree.
particularly into the Filton area. If we ever get a train, of course, you should be able to catch a train from here to the station by the side of the runway at Filton one day. But everybody's been
And that'll kill
hoping
you
for that
instead.
for a number of years. I think the publicity thing that Bob said, I mean, again, he's been saying that for 3-4 meetings, if not years, and it isn't getting any better. So you really do need to work at that, the publicity. Going back to the Rob stuff and the closure of roads and so on, I'd just like to warn you, and I think you know where I'm coming from. There will be a massive fight if you make anything more of a disaster in the Cordano Junction. It's a disaster at the moment. Anything you do is probably only going to make it worse, and you're going to get a massive pushback.
I specifically left that out of the agenda in the sense that we know that it's under review and
Yeah, but we've heard about under reviews. You know, it's like it's a typical political thing, and I'm not a politician anymore. I can say this. It's a typical political thing. It's under review. We're thinking about it. We'll consult. Oh, we've done it. If you do that with the 369, I will block the road. Never mind everybody else. You have to really think
I'm sure
about
Rob
it.
already knows that there's an awful lot of controversy over this one. Paddy wanted it next year. Sorry.
No, I wasn't actually going to say anything about buses, but I noticed that practically everybody online has dropped out. And the reason is that we've got to decide that either this is going to be a public meeting where you have to be here in person, or people have just got to use the microphone, because there's been so much chatter going on, and you can see people online, you know, just shaking their heads.
Well, I'm obviously unaware of what's going on behind me on the screen, but I wasn't aware of what you just said. I mean, the mic has been used very frequently.
Yeah, but it hasn't been used. No, no, there's been a lot of chatter going on with people without using the microphone.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of it.
Another point that I'll make that you didn't is that there is a service for people who want to do groups and go on trips. It's called the Nelsey District Transport Group.
I was going to flag that up next, actually.
Excellent. So I'll leave it to you to say so.
Well, please enlighten us as to who uses this service around the audience.
We've just
I'm
included
a
funding
trust-
on that for another
Well,
year.
I picked this up out in the foyer.
I'm here as a representative of NDCT because I'm a trustee of NDCT. The subject hasn't come up yet, but yes, it is a service provided for elderly and disabled people primarily. It's used, we now have over 500 members in North Somerset. It receives grants from a reluctant North Somerset Council and from half a dozen town councils. And it is a tremendous saving of money for the rest of North Somerset Council, because without this service, there will be an awful lot more money spent on care workers, taking people to hospital. It is primarily for the elderly and disabled, but it is also used for vulnerable people, people who live in isolated areas. And it's unclear at the moment whether this service will still be supported by North Somerset Council next year. It's been unclear for the last 3 years. And
You become a member of it, I notice. You pay to become a member.
you pay £15 a year to become a member.
And then all services or journeys then are free, are they?
No,
You
no.
pay for each journey.
You pay for each journey. It is run mostly by volunteer drivers, so it is a lot cheaper than any commercial service. All the trustees are volunteers. We do have some paid drivers and we have 3 paid office staff. But it is very good value for money. We're currently working with the town councils to work out how we can support people who are unable to pay for the fees. But I believe it saves, or it would cost at least 3 times as much more for North Somerset Council to provide the same services. And also invisible benefits so that people can carry on living in their own homes. They don't have to go into care homes. It helps with loneliness, huge benefit to people.
Can I say something about that? I'm sure you know this, but when Westlink came out in April, this was mentioned about the community transport, and it was actually renewed for another year. I know that's probably not much comfort, it's only a year, but it was renewed. And I thought that because of Westlink, it wasn't going to be, and it was. And I think like what you said there about it being a lifeline, and you touched on well-being and stuff, I think it's really important, and I'm fully supportive of it as well. I know I'm new here and I can't change the world, but I really support it. My nan used to use something very similar, and it helped her massively with her well-being. So, you know, from my point of view, if I can get in front of the right people and sort of say that it needs to stay, then I will do that. That's what I did last time, and I will do that again next year.
How many members are there roughly, Paddy?
There's about just over 500. We lost.
It's on.
We lost quite a few during COVID, obviously, because for a while we couldn't run the buses, and then we were running them with a reduced number of passengers. The numbers have picked up remarkably in the last year, and we're over the numbers we had pre-COVID now.
How many minibuses do you have?
Ooh, there's 9, I think. We have just been, or we're about to take delivery of a new electric bus, which has been paid for by lottery funding. We applied for a grant and we got £120,000 lottery funding. The delivery date, it keeps slipping as they do, but I believe it's being delivered in August, and we're also going to be leased 2 new electric buses by Nailsea Town Council, who've come into somewhat of a windfall lately because of their new housing development. But I believe it's 9 buses in total, and they're all designed to take wheelchairs. They've got hydraulic lifts at the back. Most of the drivers help passengers on and off the buses. There's usually a volunteer assistant on the bus to help people as well. So excellent service.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, just gone 9, so we'll kind of draw the meeting to a close. Are there any things you think we've missed, that you'd like to raise? Any AOB or anything? No? Comment coming from? Has anyone got the gist of what it was saying? Oh. Thank you all for coming anyway. It's, how often do you feel these meetings could be held? We were talking about it briefly earlier, and do you think it could get absorbed into the annual residents meeting, or do you feel that they should be more frequent? Do you feel perhaps every 6 months would be better?
I would just like to say I'm standing in for Carl tonight, but I'm more than happy to come again.
Yeah.
Well, how's about we perhaps, I mean, I've looked at a couple of Thursdays in October, the 5th and 12th of October, Tuesdays in October, if you want to stick to Tuesdays, the 17th, or the 3rd or the 17th.
September.
Sunday, September the 3rd.
We need one before then, don't we? Really?
Sunday, September the 3rd is the date when everything's going to change again.
Well, I think this summer is going to be difficult to have
Not everything,
meetings.
but yeah, not everything. Most, sorry, yeah. Most stuff.
I mean,
Will
I
will
would
you
suggest
know
a
by
meeting
September
after
the 3rd, the changes that you're going to
When
make?
I'll know, we
before
should
then?
know what's going to change in September by the end of this month, early next month.
Because we would like to know before September, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
So-
already said we hit a home goal with that. And I'd like to say to that, actually, I forgot, I'm in daily dialogue with First and Stagecoach. First are the biggest operator. I will obviously relay that information about them not telling people what's happening. I know the 57 wasn't theirs, but the X4 is, X5. They need to do better on that as well. It's not just us. So I will relay that to them as well. I know they're up there now still, are they?
Yes.
I was going to say, I'm here.
I speak to the two people that are involved, their network manager, which was mentioned, their network planner and their commercial development manager daily. So I will pass that home goal on to them as well. And between us, we'll work better to make sure that you know about stuff when you should know about it.
Well, before you decide to do it, preferably.
Yeah, well,
Somebody-
you're pushing it now.
Somebody said this earlier, that you go and do it.
Yes.
And it's sort of fait accompli, if you like,
Yeah, I mean,
that's it.
I can
No
tell
discussion, no.
I can tell you that the discussions we've had so far, the Porter's Head routes have not really been mentioned. The only one that's been mentioned is the X5, which you mentioned about Yatton, where something's got to give on that to keep it 3 buses. What that is, I don't know yet. Yeah, but when it is, I'm more than happy to tell you that. We speak quite a lot, or in another meeting. But when do you want to have the meeting? Do you saying you want to have the meeting before we make the decision?
I think we should have a meeting before you make the decision, before,
yeah, I'm
so that
happy
we
to do that.
know what you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm happy to
So
do
that we can at least, discuss it,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah, I'm
rather
happy to
than-
do that. Most of the stuff that's changed in September is Weston-super-Mare focused. There's a massive town network review and stuff around there. And like I said, off the top of my head, I think the only one, if it goes to Weston, obviously the X5 and Yatton was the only one that was mentioned for changes. I think that what the lady mentioned earlier about the X4, maybe having an X4A, X4B, X4C, something like that, that's certainly something I'm going to take away from this. I'm going to mention it to them. Again, it's a commercial service. There is BSIP and all that sort of stuff. So maybe we can do something, maybe we can't. It is a commercial service, but I think it's a really good idea. We could at least try it, maybe. I mean, it's not my gift to give, but I can certainly ask the question.
Well, perhaps a meeting could be held.
Oh yeah, and the Sheepway, yeah.
Maybe a meeting in Clevedon to incorporate other.
Yeah, I was going to mention that
other
actually at
groups.
the end.
I mean, obviously, I don't know about the availability of this hall. Should a meeting be held here before September, or even to
Can we
the
get
autumn?
Clevedon involved? Well,
Certainly.
I think so. Yeah, real Clevedon.
Well, I don't see
I
any
think you
reason
should.
why there couldn't be joint meetings.
Yeah, good idea. Definitely up for that.
Paddy, briefly.
Just very briefly, I misled people. It's £20 a year to be a member of NDCT, not 15.
It's what it actually says on the leaflet. I didn't want to contradict you. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending then. We'll sort of get out into the press somehow or other when another meeting could be held, maybe organise something in relation to with Clevedon Town Council.
Can I just say, I've been so grateful to hear what you've had to say tonight. It's really, I appreciate it's frustrating. I take that point when you've said lots of people in the past, but to have come out and continued to talk to us, I'm really, really grateful, and I'm very happy to come back at any point and continue the conversation. So really appreciate it, and all that you're doing, and all of those fantastic ideas. For taking them all back, and thanks also to Neil and to Rob who've come out tonight, because I think they're doing a fantastic job of trying to, really trying to take account of what people are saying and see what they can with the funding and the relationships to take it
Well,
forward.
here, and we appreciate you coming over to Portishead to do so. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And if you're still there first, thanks very much as well.
I don't know who that was.